All right, Rob Brown here with you on this Wednesday morning. Countdown's getting closer, folks. 72 hours away from the start of college football season. But tomorrow, Missouri and Murray State are going to kick off, and Arkansas and UAPB in Little Rock.
Week 0.
Yeah, that week 0 is like Coke Zero. It's not good. It doesn't have sugar. But we got sugar now. Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, bats in the leadoff position today. Then we'll head over to Columbia, South Carolina. Will Gunter talking about the Gamecocks. After that, Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net. Vince Ferrara, the sports animal in Knoxville up on the hill, gives us the latest up in Vol country. Hey, check Androids, iPhones, whatever. Allow notifications on your phones. And smash the subscribe box in the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah,
or
smash
the
box. I like that.
QR code right there.
Smash
and
the
we'll
box.
get you rolling. So we got a lot to talk about today. Get your pen and paper ready because you're going to be taking notes. It is Wednesday, August 28th. Ready to go.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, bat to lead off with us this morning. Jason, I'll let you take the ball and run with it. We are 72 hours away from opening day, the first real weekend of college football. Narrative is a lot different at Auburn. Nobody's done a better job of chronicling Auburn's woes in the offensive line area. You said when Freeze took over, you had 2 SEC caliber linemen. Now that number's up maybe to 13, 14. That right there is a great start.
Yeah, it's very different. You know, still some things to work out, and that's what early season football is all about. Unlike the NFL, you don't have preseason games to play. Even in high school, a lot of times you have jamboree games, things like that. In college football, you have to make some adjustments, and so I think we'll see some adjustments go on early season. That'll start on the offensive line. Brought in Percy Lewis, hoping he would be the guy at left tackle. But I don't believe he's going to be the guy at left tackle. He could be later on, but it looks like I would say right now that I think redshirt freshman Tyler Johnson will get a lot of play on Saturday, and he's a guy that looks every bit the part. He's 6'6", probably 310, athletic, can bend. I mean, he does all those things. He just doesn't have a lot of experience. And so I think they'll play him early. I think we'll see Dylan Wade as well at left tackle, where he played last year. Yeah. I think we'll see Dylan Wade at left tackle and left guard. I think you'll see Tate Johnson some at left guard. I think the right side is pretty set, and of course in the middle with Connor Lew. But I think we'll see a little bit of moving around there on the left side just to see, hey, what's our best 5? What is it? Yeah. What's the best group? The good news is that you have the option to do that now instead of let's just try to see if we can find 5. Now you're trying to find your best 5, and that's a very different situation to be in. And that's probably the best thing about it is that they have some options. They're just looking for the best option.
How is DeAndre Carter, the big guy out of Mater D, California high school, legendary high school? He came in with a lot of hype, and he's a high 4-star offensive lineman. Biggest, I guess, ranked recruit Auburn offensive line has brought in a while.
Yeah, he's doing well. He's actually lost about 25 pounds since he got on campus, which was good for him. And so he's trimmed down, looks really good. He's got actually worked in some with his second group yesterday. Okay. I think he'll probably redshirt because there are a lot of guys there that can play on the offensive line, especially at those guard positions. So I think it'd take a while to get to him. But I think he's doing a good job. And I think he's a guy that they feel really excited about here down the road as one of the building blocks at one of those guard spots. But, yeah, I think he's doing a good job. But, they've had guys that have developed and come on. And we even saw yesterday Akron transfer Ronan Chambers inside playing some guard. And he's a guy that started games at tackle in D1 football. Saw him taking some snaps. So they're like what we've seen, you better be prepared for any and everything. And so they've prepared guys to be ready to play at some of these other spots in case. But I think DeAndre's done a good job. It's just a young guy that wasn't here in the spring, and so almost an impossibility for him to be ready to jump out there this early.
We hear every year about the tight end position, and it's talked about, but you don't see a lot. But in Hugh Freeze's offense, is the tight end going to catch 35 passes or just catch 7 and be a great blocker?
Yeah,
in this new system.
We saw it last year. We saw him used, and I think Rivaldo Fairweather is going to be a big part of things. I think we've seen Brandon Frazier even more a part of things in the passing game for this offense. The question is going to be, what does your identity look like 4 or 5 weeks into the season? Because your identity may be, hey, we can run the football with 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end. Oh, does it take 2 tight ends to run the football? Then it changes things. Or heck, the wide receivers are better than we thought. We're going to go 4 wide and no tight ends, and we're going to run it and spread you out and do it. That's what we don't know. But we do know that Rivaldo Fairweather is going to be a part of things. I think he's a guy that's going to see more single coverage inside, because for much of last year, especially after the Cal game, he was the guy that everybody focused their defense on, going, look, if they throw the football, that's the guy we have to worry about. We don't have to worry about anybody else.
Yeah.
That's not the case right now. And so it should allow him to be able to have a little bit more open space in the middle of the field.
Yeah. The reason I said that is because I think of Rivaldo Fairweather like Evan Ingram, a guy that Hugh Freeze recruited, who weighed about 225, 230, that hybrid. Rivaldo is vastly undervalued. What's his ceiling?
Yeah, I think he's an NFL guy as one of those hybrid type guys, and he's still a guy that's still the basketball guy that turned to play football. And he's still kind of morphing into that football role. We saw it last year, how much he did, how much he improved, and now he's had a full off season. I think you'll see a guy that now understands defenses. Understands what they're trying to do, route concepts, all those things. I think that's to me the bigger part of this offense. It won't look a ton different in terms of how they line up, but how it will execute different is that there's going to be a lot asked of obviously Peyton Thorne at quarterback, but Connor Lew, and then those wide receivers, because they have to adjust the RPO. Going, look, if we get this look, we're throwing the football, and you better be prepared to run this route. And so that's why this is one where the young wide receivers and Hugh Freeze has talked about, especially Malcolm Simmons and Perry Thompson, because they weren't go through spring. It's been there's still some mistakes and some things to clean up for those guys. I think the other guys that have been here a little bit more sure of what they're doing. So now you when you start to get into game week and narrow down what you're doing and rep just those individual things more, it should help the young guys really start to go, okay, pick up a little bit more. Now you can add some things back into the offense. You just kind of throw everything at them those first 3 weeks and go, hey, swallow as much as you can. Now you can start to digest a little bit, and I think that'll help some of these young guys.
Yeah, and I feel really good about the running back room. I think everybody does. And then you think about special teams. Real quick on McPherson. He's gaining weight. He's kicking more. But God, how many teams – it's sort of like Texas with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning in the kicking room at Auburn, Alex McPherson and Towns Magoo. I want McPherson back, but Auburn's fairly blessed in that regard. What do you think is going to end up happening with McPherson?
Yeah, I think it'll be a couple of weeks before we see him. He's starting to kick, but kicking a couple hours in practice and then getting ready to kick in a game is different. And so I think because of that, I think we'll see him ease into things. I don't know that we'll ever see him kick off and be a kickoff guy this year.
Okay.
I just don't know that will be a part of things. He's up to, I think, around 150 pounds. So he's gained back about 30 or so pounds, since this thing happened. And it comes back now in about 8 to 10 pounds a week, which for him is great news. The problem is that doing that, you're trying to add back the strength and the muscle and the things lost. And so that's the hard part of this. So the good news is you got Towns Magoo. Question how can you play this to where you can potentially maybe still try to redshirt him in 4 games, do those things, and allow Alex McPherson to get back and step into that role. They did add a transfer from Birmingham Southern who could potentially be a kickoff man.
Yeah.
So you have somebody that could be a kickoff man. Maybe Alex can then return to kicking. Towns can kick some early, still potentially redshirt. We'll just have to see. It's going to be a week-by-week basis to see, how strong he is, how good they feel about him kind of getting in that situation again.
Yeah. All right, we got about 5 minutes left. I know you got a busy morning. Looking at the defense, DJ Durkin, he's been around the SEC. He knows it. He's got players, depth on the defensive line, the front 7. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest thing. I had, somebody – I wrote a little bit about DJ Durkin's defense this morning, and somebody said, I bet he wouldn't have rushed just 2 guys on 4th and 31. I was like, well, he probably wouldn't have, but last year they could have rushed 6 and they wouldn't have gotten pressure. That was the whole point. You don't have that situation now. You've got more guys that can potentially get to the quarterback. Last year they had 2 guys, and when those guys got tired, it was over with. Now you have potentially more of those guys when you look outside at Keldrick Falk and Morris Williams behind him, a true freshman that can really run. On the other side, you got Jalen McLeod, Kieron Crawford, Jamonta Waller, even Joe Phillips. So you've got a lot more options just outside. And then on the interior, I think we'll see 7, 8 different guys potentially for 2 spots. I think they're going to rotate that many guys in the middle. And then you find somebody that, hey, that guy's getting it done. Then it narrows down the focus for that game. I think we'll see a lot of guys early, and then you figure out, hey, who's playing the best today, and then play those guys more. But I think that's a good situation to have. I still kind of waiting for one guy to become the guy for this team outside of the edge and the end spots. Who can step up in the middle and become one of those guys? Is it Isaiah Rakes? Is it Phillip Bleedy?
Yeah.
Blake Blockton, true freshman. Bobby Jameson Travis is the guy I'm really watching. That was a second-year college guy.
What about Amaris Williams, a kid out of North Carolina who was a Florida commit, switched to Auburn on signing day? He's how mobile is he? Inside, outside, or have they dedicated one area?
Yeah. Morris Williams is that he's from North Carolina. He'll be an end guy because he's probably 255, 260.
Okay.
I think we'll see Keldrick Falk slide inside to play some tackle at nearly 290. I think he'll play.
And he looks like he weighs.
He looks like he weighs
215.
Yeah, correct. He's 290 pounds.
That's when you know you've seen a 5-star. It's from Highland Home, Alabama, and his little brother's already committed to Auburn.
Yep. Morris Williams is 255, 260, but my guess is would still run in the 4.6 range. He's that kind of freakish athlete.
Wow.
And so I think when you put those guys, I think on 4th downs or 3rd and long situations, some of those things, I think you could see Keldrick Falk and Malik Blockton inside and Morris Williams and, Jalen McLeod outside, some situations where you could do those things and have, kind of the old rabbit thing look where you have a bunch of guys that can really run up front. I think they have the options to do a lot of those things. You can put Kieron Crawford and Jalen McLeod on the field at the same time. I think they're going to have a lot of different things to throw throw it offensive.
Right. I got a question here from somebody. What happened? They said, why was Antonio Coleman out of Saraland, Alabama, held out of his game, I think, Friday night? Was that true? I got 3 people texting me on that. I'm going to ask Jason.
It had some off-field issues. Still on the team, and that was dressed in warm-ups, then just didn't play. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But so far we've heard nothing from an Auburn perspective that would change things for them. So
all right. And Eugene Asante, is he going to be the guy with the radio communication?
I think so. We haven't really gotten any confirmation yet. I would think Asante would be one of those guys. Austin Keys, probably another one of those guys because Keys has played for Durkin before. So I think he would be one of those guys that might be a possibility, depending on which one of those is on the field. I would say those are the two most likely guys in the middle. And then, I thought maybe Jaron Thompson, if you wanted to do it from a safety perspective, where you could talk to the secondary guys. But I would say probably Asante and or Austin Keys would be the guys.
Yeah, I told Eugene Asante at media days, I said, my nickname for you is the Bone Collector. I love that guy as a linebacker. All right, how do people follow you, Jason? And as always, thanks so much for taking time to share us, not just the people from Sylacauga, but a lot of people out there really love and respect the work you do.
Yeah, you can check us out at auburnundercover.com, part of 24/7 network. You can follow us. Subscribe to our YouTube page, Auburn Undercover. Tons of videos. Me and Nathan did one after a 50-minute viewing window yesterday at practice. We got to watch nearly an hour of practice, which is pretty incredible to see. So check that out. Follow us. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram at ITATJason, and looking forward to getting this thing rolling.
Absolutely, man. We'll do it again next week. Thanks. Have a great day. All right, let's say something real quick about one of our sponsors. I'm wearing the hat, Coolmore Logistics and Transportation, located in Memphis. Anything that you need shipped cross-country, 200 miles, 2,500 miles, LTL, vans, containers. They even move ductile pipe, which is used for clean drinking water. Companies like, American Cast Iron Pipe Company in Birmingham, they got to move it. They can use Coolmore Logistics and Transportation. Robert Weaver, John Dicken, the whole group over there. These guys get after it. You put the word out, you got to move a load. The phones blow up, and they find the drivers, and they get her done. Nobody will outwork them, nor will they outwork our man that's been up since probably 4:15, 4:30 this morning over in Columbia, South Carolina, 107.5. The Game, Will Gunter. Will, I was talking to my son. He's out in California this summer, my youngest one, huge Grizz fan. I said, everything good to go for John Morant? And I said, we were talking about him, and I'm thinking, nobody knows more that I talk with about John Morant and all than Will Gunter. But everybody down there in that small town where he's from in South Carolina, think he's ready to go and resume his great career?
Yeah, he was. I saw him. He was in an AAU tournament up there. I want to say April, April or May, one of the two. And had a chance to talk with him for a few minutes. He had a girls team that he's sponsored, put together, and that was up here, and he was trying to spend more time with them and not do, he was trying to be a good role model for them. So, but he's excited. Last I talked to him, he's excited and ready to go, and says he's going to be healthy. And we actually talked more about G.G. Jackson coming there than we did about him and his status. And he's excited to partner with G.G. this year, and thinks they can be a pretty good 1-2.
Well, I wish him nothing but the best. I'm a huge Grizzlies fan living in Memphis, and John Morant, obviously, my son Wilson saw him when I think John was a sophomore. They played at Auburn. He goes, Dad, I just saw the number 1 pick in the draft. Of course, he ended up being number 2, but compared to Zion, he's had a great career. Let's talk about the Gamecocks side. By the way, I watched an awesome documentary on one of my favorite coaches ever, Frank Beamer, and Shane Beamer's in there a lot, holding the cable on the sidelines. I mean, he grew up in this culture. I don't know him. You do. You can't help but love the guy. His enthusiasm, his drive, his passion. Gamecocks got Old Dominion coming up, ODU Saturday. Who doesn't pull for Shane Beamer? Make a case for Carolina having a good year. I do. I love guys like him because I'm jacked up like JoJo the circus boy. I'll admit it. But the Gamecocks, 82,000 every game, doesn't matter. They love that school, and they love the Gamecocks.
To answer your question, there are some coaches. Look, Kentucky does not pull for Shane Beamer. They do not like Shane Beamer. Tennessee, who we do not play. Tennessee does not like Shane Beamer. And I get it. Shane is, as you said, he's one of those overly optimistic people. Is going to find sunshine on a cloudy day and is going to be that guy. But and that's what the fan base likes. And there's a little bit of Dabo, maybe a good bit of Dabo Sweeney in him, where Dabo pushed that program at Clemson through some early years with positivity that maybe some people didn't want to hear. And I think Shane is trying to do some of that now. We'll find out on Saturday afternoon at 4:15, how this 2024 edition looks, and how the quarterback situation is. Is the defense better? Have they found the answer at running back with Rocket Sanders? What's happening at wide receiver? A lot of questions there, and sometimes that positive nature, it can guide your fan base and keep you going in rough times. But at the end of the day, you got to win football games, and there's a reason when you beat Kentucky. He's beaten them twice. They lost the first year, but Mark Stoops, they just had those wins stripped of them. So technically, Mark Stoops has never beaten Shane Beamer, and I think that upsets Kentucky fans even more.
Yeah, and I think that's what Tony Barnhart was talking about Monday night at the Touchdown Club in Memphis is, those people that were at the game, they saw it, and you can't unsee that, but that's just what it is. Talk about the offense with your new quarterback at South Carolina. Last couple of years, you had Spencer Rattler. He had his ups and downs. I mean, hell, who doesn't in this league? But the offense, you've got Rocket Sanders coming in from Arkansas, a kid out of Rockledge, Florida. How good is he health-wise? I know he got up big. I think last year he weighed 245. Then he went to Dallas for his rehab and kind of just disappeared. But he's got a ton of ability.
Yeah, in terms of Rocket, we'll kind of see what happens with him. They according to Shane yesterday, Shane had his press conference on Tuesday. Always has his press conference on Tuesday. They're not going to keep him on a pitch count or a run count, if you will. They used the word pitch count yesterday, but they're not going to limit him in terms of what he is expected to do on Saturday afternoon. Now, with that being said, I think they'd like to only get him 10 to 12 carries and have him really fresh for Kentucky and LSU in the coming weeks. And that's where it starts. We are really interested to see what this offense is, because you go from Spencer Rattler, who was not going to beat you with his legs, who was going to beat you with his arm, to Lenore Sellers, who can beat you with his legs. And also you get the return of Sean Elliott, who comes over from Georgia State, where he was the head coach and now comes in. And there's no doubt Sean Elliott will bring some of the parts of that run game, that zone read that was so successful with Steve Spurrier. Sean Elliott was here and on that staff, was part of that group that put together that offense for Connor Shaw just over about 12 years ago. And so how do does Sean Elliott come in and mesh that run game, that zone, both the RPOs, but also the zone read along with what Dow Loggins likes to do, which is more of a pro style system. So it's really going to be interesting to see the play calling. I go back to the spring game. We always talk about people being vanilla. South Carolina was extra vanilla. I mean, they didn't throw. I don't think there was a pass attempted of more than 20 yards down the field. It might have been 25. I can't remember. But they were very vanilla in that spring game. And I don't expect them to be very to put a lot of stuff on film with the magnitude of the two games coming up behind it. So I think what we're learning, what we want to see on Saturday night is, how does Rocket Sanders look? How does Lenore Sellers handle the play calls coming in? Does he handle clock management well? What does his scrambling look like? And then really it comes down to the offensive line, which is the huge question around here. Are they able to protect Lenore Sellers? Are they able to open holes for running backs?
Well, you think about in this league, the wide receivers on a team compared to their importance 10 years ago versus the running backs. I mean, it's almost like a 180 reversal. But you still got to be able to run the ball. I mean, every time we think that we've figured it out, something new comes along. What kind of new wrinkles is South Carolina going to have in their offense that you maybe nobody's seen, that it's not off the record type stuff, but you can relate to us?
Well, again, the question is how much of the quarterback run game do they incorporate? And look, I think I've kind of come full circle on this. I think you're going to see Robbie Ashford. Let me figure out how I want to phrase this. Yeah. Robbie Ashford and Lenore Sellers are not two different quarterbacks. Sellers might be a better passer, but it's not like Spencer Rattler, who was not a runner, and then you bring in a Wildcat-esque quarterback, if you will.
Yeah.
Ashford and Sellers are basically, when you prepare, you're preparing for the same quarterback. You're not. There's not going to be a difference. What I do think is, if they do utilize this zone read in the quarterback run, you can see Robbie Ashford go in there almost as another running back to just take hits off of Lenore Sellers. So now instead of Sellers running it maybe 15 or 16 times a game, maybe he only runs it 9, but Robbie Ashford runs it 7. So now that's 7 tackles that Lenora Sellers doesn't take, or 7 shots to the shoulder. I think that's what's going to be a different wrinkle, is that you're going to see them try to incorporate the quarterback run game, which I think you've got to have in the college game now. I think you have to have a guy who can make some plays with his legs when the pocket breaks down, and that is what South Carolina has now. In terms of just how much of a new wrinkle that is for Sellers, I don't know just yet. We won't know, I think, until Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that schedule, ODU Saturday and then Kentucky and LSU, you're going to know after 3 weeks what you got. And it's hard to change your identity. Tigers don't change their stripes, or zebras don't change their stripes, just their watering holes. It's tough. Talent-wise, where does this defense rank with some of the other ones that Beamer's had in his first few years? What is this, year 5 now for Shane Beamer?
4.
4, okay.
God. Talent-wise, I think this is the best he's had. Here's what stands out, and we knew this going in, but they released the depth chart on Monday, and it wasn't until you could actually look at it and you start realizing the depth chart they put out listed basically a 4-2-5, if you will. All right, so four defensive linemen, 2 linebackers. In each position, so 6 positions. In each position, you had 3 players listed, 18 total guys, those front 6, okay? 15 of these players have played 4 years of college football or more. 4 years or more, 15 out of that. So again, a 3-deep depth chart. There's 1 junior, Brian Thomas Jr. So he's actually a legitimate junior. And then there's two. There's a freshman in Dylan Stewart and a sophomore in Desmond Yumi-Zulu. And I say that because you're talking about your front 6, 15 guys in that 3 deep have played 4 years of football or more, 4 years of football or more. There is a lot of experience. And then you go to the back group, the back 5, and you've got O.D. Fortune at one cornerback spot, who's a redshirt senior. You've got Nick Emanwari and DQ Smith, who have played pretty much every snap since the first game of their freshman year. Jalen Kilgore started it, and he's a sophomore, played a lot last year. And then you got one other cornerback spot, which is basically going to be a true sophomore in Judge Collier. But you're talking about 9 positions out there, essentially, that are filled by guys who have played over 30 games, probably started over 30 games of college football. So how good are they? Hopefully they're pretty good, but they are definitely experienced.
Well, I mean, that one of the most impressive charts that I look at is the number of guys you've got on your roster that have played in 20 or more games or started in 30 or more games. And when you get that experience, that can overcome, even in some cases, talent. I mean, a guy that runs really fast as a linebacker, if he runs past the play versus making the play, you know what's better. I mean, and that's why we got to, look at the greatest running backs ever, like Emmitt Smith. He didn't run a 4.40. He probably ran a 4.6, but he had that competitive speed. South Carolina this season, everybody, all you hear about coaches is they're on the hot seat. They're on the hot seat. It's ridiculous. Go back to Frank Beamer. I mean, obviously different era. His 6th year, he was 2-8-1. And then it finally happened. And, when Bill Dooley left Virginia Tech, he took over. It was a mess. Remember, they had a lot of problems. They really struggled. Shane Beamer is a young guy. Talk about recruiting right now in South Carolina. And also, I know the Gamecocks go into Georgia. They go into North Carolina. They go into Florida. How's this class shaping up, and what are their most immediate needs?
This isn't going to be one of their particularly better class. I mean, things can always change. We're here we're at the end of August, between now and signing day. But
when you start winning this season, that changes everything.
Yeah, well, in recruiting, it's kind of like the class they just signed, that is freshmen on campus now, was built off of the Gator Bowl season, where they lost to Notre Dame in the exciting game, but beat Clemson and beat Tennessee. And that's what you do. You get guys on campus in those situations, and it might not pay off for this class, but it kind of gets the ball rolling with the next class. And so the class that was just signed was one of the better classes South Carolina's had in the last 10 or 15 years. This class is not going to be. That doesn't matter as much now because of the transfer portal. And, I'll give you an example. One of the positions you just asked about biggest needs, South Carolina's got to figure out a way to recruit some defensive tackles. Georgia is coming in and taking every defensive tackle that they want from anywhere in the Southeast, and then they go nationally. South Carolina's lost several defensive tackles just because, the allure of going to play for Georgia. They're going to have to hit going back to what I just told you about the depth chart. You're talking about the two starters are both definitely gone after this year. You lose another transfer in that group that'll be out. They've got a lot of older players at defensive tackle, and that to me is a massive concern because in this league, obviously, you have to win at the line of scrimmage. And the offensive line recruiting has been really good. Defensive line recruiting, you have landed a guy or two here, Desmond Umizulu again, and then 5-star Dylan Stewart at the end positions. But they have got to get guys on the interior right now that can hold up against these athletic, big, monstrous offensive lines in the SEC. You've got to be able to stop the run. So when you ask about that, they do have a 4-star, Caleb Williams, I think is his name, out of the Maryland area, I believe, DC area, that is committed to him as a defensive tackle. But that is a situation. They lost a kid in state that they led for a long time, and the kid ended up going to Clemson. They lost some other defensive tackles they thought they were in good shape for. That is a concern. That's a massive concern as we go toward signing day and then whatever occurs with the transfer portal.
Yeah. All right. One more before we let you go. I know you got a big day ahead. South Carolina, in those first 3 games, what has to happen if they beat Kentucky? They should beat ODU. They beat Kentucky. Say they pull off LSU, because every year somebody goes in there and gets whacked that doesn't expect it. LSU's coming in. They've got Southern Cal this weekend. They're coming in there. You hear the term trap game, whatever, but what do you think? What do you think is going to happen early in these first 3 games?
I don't know. We don't. There's a lot of. I just mentioned that experience, and I'm looking. I've got my game notes here, and I want to give you the right note before I say something. But I want to say it's 75% of this roster. Now they're experienced. There's a lot of juniors, seniors, and everything.
Yeah.
But welcome to roster turnover. 75. I want you to listen to the stat because this encapsulates college football now, in my opinion, Rob. For South Carolina, who's got a lot of older players, they're one of the most experienced players. They are the second most experienced team in terms of seniors in the country. 38 seniors. They are actually the most experienced Power 4 team in the country with 38 seniors. The only team that has more seniors is Eastern Michigan, who has 39. But listen to 75 of the 118 players on the South Carolina roster are either in their first or second year. So you got all this experience, but it's new guys. Do the new guys come over? Have they picked up the system really well?
Yeah.
Do they understand what Clayton White wants defensively? Do they understand? It's a really interesting dynamic in college football now, where South Carolina's got the most seniors of any Power 4. Got to get used to saying that. Power 4 team in the country, and they're only they're the second most behind Eastern Michigan. But yet, 75 of these guys, 75 of players on this roster, are first or second year guys. So we're in a learning process with this team. You got a redshirt freshman quarterback. I think for them to be successful, my personal opinion, for them to be successful, they've got to run the football. You got to. Rocket Sanders is a transfer, first year guy. Oscar Attaway is a first year transfer out of North Texas. The third string running back, or I don't know, one of the third or fourth string running back. We had a great debate about depth charts this morning, but Jawan Howe is a transfer. So you see what I'm saying? Like all of these guys, they do have depth at running back. They've got a good one in Rocket Sanders, but to take that pressure off of Lenore Sillers, that offensive line, two starters are new first-year transfers. Torricelli Simpkins and Kamar Bell. They're seniors. One of them's a 6-year senior, but they're first-year guys. And that's, I think, the new age of schools like South Carolina trying to keep up with the Joneses. You have to fill your roster with these first and second year kind of transfers, but they might be seniors. So they're experienced. They're just not experienced with your program. And so now we go into a season going, boy, how are these guys going to perform?
Okay. Yeah. All right. Look, there's a lot happening. This is what I love about it. Will Gunter catching 107.5 the game in Columbia, South Carolina. We'll do it again next week. Love having your report. I think that's one of the coolest stats, 38 seniors for South Carolina. That'll be in my weekly column that I write. That's
why I wanted to make sure I read it correctly to you.
Yeah. I love these numbers. All right. Take care. Appreciate it. All right. Let's get moving to up in the northwest corner of Arkansas in Springdale, Fayetteville. the Hogplex up there. And Vince Ferrara will join us as well in just a moment from the Sports Animal in Knoxville. Oh, Dudley, love the background. Reynolds Razorback Stadium. Speaking of that, are the naming rights what's going on with
it's
that?
Still under wraps. That's got to be coming up, and I guess we'll know next year, or when they put a new name on it next year. But that's been very quiet, so I don't know if there's a lot of negotiations going on behind the scenes, or if somebody's waiting to see how they do this year before they want to put a price tag on it.
Yeah, and I would make a joke and say, it's under Reynolds wrap, but it's not the same guy. It's Henry Reynolds, the newspaper magnate mogul, isn't it? The publishing magnate. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's talk. Obviously, Will was talking about Rocket Sanders. He's gone. KJ Jefferson's at Central Florida, but I like this quarterback, Talon Green, who's from the Dallas area. He came from Boise. What are you hearing? And I know you don't have a whole lot of access at practice, but you got your sources about the offense and Bobby Petrino and the new things that he's going to try to do.
Let's start with they like each other. That was a problem last year. NIL, personalities, the piece of the pie being too big for some people and not big enough for others, apparently. And what turned out to be a bad hire, Dan Enos, all factored into. And I got to mention Rocket Sanders too. He was never healthy, the full year last year. They expected him to be the bell cow, if not the best running back in the SEC, one of the best. But he couldn't stay healthy, couldn't get that burst, didn't practice a lot. It just never was a good mix there last year. And, you look back on it and you can see little things. Once the season came along, you didn't get to be in practice the same way it'll be this year. So you didn't see maybe some of that tension and whatever. But you could see it on game day. As you were mentioning, the quarterback, Talon is Bobby Petrino's handpicked guy. There were several guys out there that he could have gotten. He chose this guy, and he's, I don't think he's a finished product, but he is somebody that has shown a lot of potential, and now he's working with a great quarterback coach. And, you have to give Coach Petrino credit for that. The quarterbacks don't go backwards under him; they go forwards.
Yeah, and like Will said just in the previous segment, it's really important to have a quarterback who can get in there and run, or a backup quarterback who can take some of those hits that your starters got. I mean, Talon Green is a guy that can pass, but he also can run. He's not, this guy that's going to run all the time, but man, he's got a stride on him. I'm not saying he's Matt Jones, Daddy Longlegs at 6'7", but I think Talon Green is athletically what Bobby Petrino loves. I'm just trying to think back, Vince and Dudley. When was the last time we saw a Bobby Petrino quarterback, one that he dedicates his time to? Go back and look in 2010 when Ryan Mallett out of Texarkana went down, and then they bring in Tyler Wilson out of Greenwood. That was the backup, and he was scary good. It just seems to me like Bobby Petrino trains his quarterbacks for every possible scenario, and they're cerebral. They know the playbook. I think
that's something that Talon has talked about in his meetings with the media post practice. How prepared they are, how everybody is in a situation where they're going to know exactly what they're doing, that you read it. That you can't read the play once it starts. You've got to know what you're going to do ahead of time. So obviously you make quick decisions and all that, but you've got to know what's going to happen before it happens, which sounds stupid, but in a football situation, that's got to be the thing. And he's always done a great job of preparing them. I'm excited to watch them play on Thursday night. Me and Allen Iverson don't like practice. We like games. And looking forward to seeing what they got and really to get some kind of, your numbers. I heard the previous guest toss out that senior number. In this ball game on Thursday night in Little Rock, there will be 148 players eligible to play. 63 scholarships for UAPB, 85 for Arkansas. Out of those 148, 88 of them did not play for their team last year. So I was supposed to predict how the game's going to go.
Wow.
It's a guess, man. It's just a guess. You're basing it on last year. You're basing it on what these kids did in other places. I should say back with the transfer portal, I can't call them kids anymore. They're 20, 22, 23,
I know.
all that. So.
But we have kids the same age. I do the same thing, Dudley. I call somebody's 35 years old and go, he's a good kid. I mean,
my wife gets on me a little bit because I'll say little girl, and the little girl's like 40.
Yeah, that's right. By the way, Dudley, recommendation here: use that background during football. That is a gorgeous background. I mean, God, that is a beautiful stadium with a spectacular view. And we were over in Hardy over the weekend, caught 219 rainbow trout on the Spring River. God, it was fun. And some of the combatants, some of the fishermen were unable to really even cast a line as the trip went on, but we had a great time. Caught, like I said,
I do everything I can to take the gaze off of this and project it behind me, whether it's a baseball field or
it's just a great.
I realize I'm not a male model. I've been pretty good at it.
Hey, look, man, nobody ever says anything about that. I mean, you're the man. You're the Razorback man, and like I said, it looks like the sun. That is a great background. Vince is having a little bit of difficulty where he is, but Dudley, I want to ask you about the defense. Last year, again, Dan Enos, and I'll be the first to admit I was also a fan of his because of what he had done there with Brett Bielema, and it was completely different this time. What you said in your opening remarks says everything about why I think Arkansas was so dysfunctional last year. KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, if both of those guys would have been all in on every Saturday, that's a totally different outcome last season. Can't say it enough. Now you got Bobby Petrino. Cole Kubelik talked about him at the Touchdown Club a couple of weeks ago. He goes, look, he's not the most pleasant guy to be around. I don't think anybody wants to spend the weekend at the lake with him. But he ain't paid to entertain people. He's paid to win football games and to coach. And there are very few in America who get more out of a quarterback and his offense than Bobby Petrino. So I think and you're hard-pressed to find anybody out there that wants to see Sam Pittman lose his job. But, again, that's just the business. And, no matter what happens, he'll be generationally wealthy for life. The game won Arkansas Pine Bluff. I look for Arkansas to win big. It's about them getting better. That next week you go to Oklahoma State. They're getting some votes, and they're on some of the lists for making the 12-team college football playoff. I'm going to throw a scenario at you. Arkansas goes in there and wins that game 31-19. What does that do for the rest of the season and for that locker room? Because I think about Mike Norvell, and I'm a big fan of his. But, damn it, he has lost his locker room and his team by harping and that culture of 31 guys quitting in the bowl game last year. Damn it, you didn't get in the playoffs, and a damn thing you can do about it except go out there and lay it on the line again and again and again and get better. And I think that carryover about we won out of the ACC and all that stuff, those kids are seeing that. He's got to focus on getting his team back together.
Coach Norvell, I think he's a good guy. I think he's a great coach. But, they allowed the narrative. They allowed the narrative the entire postseason last year, the entire offseason to be about what didn't happen instead of what was going to happen. They went over there to Ireland. Georgia Tech ran the ball. They used to, I mentioned earlier, quarterback running the ball. I mean, Haynes King did a great job in getting yards, not only getting yards, but pushing for more and trying to win over folks. I mean, I was very impressed with Georgia Tech. Their coach really did a great job, had a great game plan. And Florida State, I'm sure, had more talent. There's no doubt they had more talent. But they weren't ready to play. Georgia Tech was, and I don't care if it's in Ireland or Amigan or wherever. You got to show up ready to play.
Our Grubs. You could be at Blue Jays and play it. But one thing about Georgia Tech, two interesting things. They just got a commitment from their first 5-star offensive lineman, I think, in 20 years. Number two, Brent Key was a George O'Leary product. I mistakenly said Paul Johnson the other day. No, he played for George O'Leary. And he was on the Georgia Tech team that beat Georgia 3 straight years. Another interesting fact about Brent Key, since he took over during the season a couple of years ago at Georgia Tech down on the flats, Georgia Tech is against DC, Assembling Rec. They've got money. They've got a lot of engineers. They're starting to figure out what's going on. So you go, Arkansas wins in Stillwater. Let's paint that scenario. What does that do to the locker room there? Because you know what, Sam Pittman, I see he's a guy that loves Arkansas so much. He ain't gonna get in the way of progress. And if Bobby Petrino's getting the credit, he ain't gonna care who's getting the credit as long as they're wearing a Razorback jersey. That's just my take.
Well, it is, it is a huge game. It will set the narrative for the season. If you lose it, you're going to be 1-1. You've got a tough schedule ahead. You're not going to get to where you need to be. The drum beat will start if it hadn't already. As you said, everybody thinks Coach Pittman's a good guy. He is. It's just business, and you can't do this same thing again this year. Obviously, they've made a lot of changes, but if they were to win that football game, and that's going to be tough, Ollie Gordon, is the nation's best running back, or at least one of the nation's best. They've got a real good football team. I listened to Coach Gundy's press conference for one of the Dakota states that they're playing this weekend. He feels good about his football team. They've sold out season tickets over there again. It has a lot to do with what they've done in the past and what they believe in the future. It would be a huge upset. It would get Arkansas back on the scene. Now, you would still have to go out and continue to get better.
Yeah.
But I don't know of anybody that right now would bet their house that Arkansas is going to go over there and win because of what we've seen in the past of the two teams.
Yeah.
But if we do, it doesn't flip the script, but it turns the script a little bit.
Yeah.
And you have to continue to add on to it. But it's a huge, unbelievably huge game for them. And, you better go down and take care of UAPB. They've had times where they've started the season against these lesser foes or foes with lesser scholarships and all that, and hadn't been ready to play.
Yeah.
In week one, and it's week one. It's not week 0. I don't care what anybody says. Week one. You've got to be ready to play, or the other team's going to be, because this is their Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, what you said, 88 of the 148 players didn't play for their school last year. That's a different narrative. Vince Ferrara, join us. I don't care if it's audio, video, whatever. He's got a Blue Jay on the line, as Andy Baird used to say on the trading floor if there's a bad connection. He goes, I don't know what's going on there. However, we got a Blue Jay on the line. All right. So, Dudley, what I love about you is you're so versatile. Your basketball, football, baseball, Cowboys, Celtics, St. Louis Cardinals. This SEC season, isn't it cool how all the negative talk, which I don't like anything negative. It's positive in, positive out with me. But transfer portal, NIL, it just goes out the window. You can't defeat college football. The passion. Tony Barnhart Monday night at the Touchdown Club in Memphis, Mr. College Football. Then we hung out with him in the lobby by the bar afterwards. You just got to love him. You've got that personality like he does. You are a true grit journalist. You cover the Hogs. You're not a fan. I mean, you graduated from there, but you do your job and you're fair. And I've noticed with journalists, you can be critical. It's not like I'm a huge Mike Norvell fan because of what he did at Memphis. And I'm just saying, if I was his advisor, I'd say, Coach, I saw Gus Malzahn do that when Auburn lost the national championship game. 13 seconds. Got to be 13 seconds better because you lost in the last few seconds. You get over it. You just it's an empty beer can. Put it away. You got to. I look at Arkansas, and we were talking. Oh my God, a lot of Hog fans there the other night. I was talking to one of them about Arkansas imposing their will on Texas in that game in 21 up in Fayetteville. Said Texas in the second half they didn't want any more of that. So, now Sam Pittman is probably spending more time with the offensive line. Talk about that room. And Vince, join us whenever you can because I want to get your talk on Tennessee as well. But that offensive line room, it's so critical. But that's one area where you can actually develop players. And if they'll stick it out for 2 or 3 years, it's worth it with a guy like Sam Pittman.
Arkansas had individual talented offensive linemen last year. Some of them have gone on to get on NFL rosters, but it wasn't working cohesively. There was a rift with the quarterback from from everything you hear. It just wasn't working well. I know you mentioned Rocket Sanders going to Dallas. That didn't go over very well to rehab. I mean, we got plenty of good doctors and facilities up here, and you got to be locked in, not looking ahead to your NFL. And I loved Rocket in terms of the kid and what he did as a player, but I don't think agents / lawyers / uncles make great decisions sometimes, and that factored into things as well. What I will say, and by the way, I appreciate the kind words, and that's what I try to do. The wife didn't understand, why I don't care whether nobody likes me, or not. What I'm saying, you're always afraid there's going to be somebody in the alley or something. But you have to say, especially when you get married, you have to say what you believe in. I can't peddle BS. And
correct.
It's definite. I mean, I'm very clear. I hope Coach Pittman and his team have a good season because I don't root against anybody. But I also it's business, and that business decision will really, really start to be formulated on that outcome of that Oklahoma State game.
Yeah, and I'm with you. It is a business, and for coaches with the buyouts and all, it's a very profitable business. All right, let's flip around here right now. Looking at the SEC, these opening weekend games, and I'm going to get your picks while I got you. We talked Monday. We started off talking about Miami at Florida in the Swamp. What happens? As only Dudley Dawson. Hold on. Before I do those picks, give me your pick real quick on that Miami-Florida game, Dudley, and then we're going to go to Vince. We got Vince working now.
Everybody has told me that Miami is better and that Billy Napier's coaching for his job. So even though it's at Florida, I'd have to pick Miami. But man, I always, it's tough picking visiting teams, especially those who have been inconsistent. I'm going to go with Miami.
All right. Vince Ferrara, Sports Animal in Knoxville. Man, Vince, your persistence paid off. We got you. Ladies and gentlemen, this crowd of some 105,000 rises to their feet. And in just a few moments, the Pride of the Southland Band will come out and form the giant T. And then Vince Ferrara will run onto the field with Smokey the Hound. And it's football time in Tennessee. Vince, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm good. Ready for this game. It's crazy. Keenan Peely, we're outlining it today. He's a starting linebacker, a transfer from BYU last year, got hurt after playing great in the first game. He was in the 2016 signing class. He's 26 years old, 7th year of eligibility, right? And he had a 2-year mission in when he was at BYU. Before that, he went on a 2-year mission. So he's been around that long. He's 26 years old, married, has a family, and this will be the first time that he'll get to run through the tee in his pads because their first game was in Nashville last year. He hasn't done that yet. He's been here forever, but first time he's getting an opportunity. So everyone's got a kind of a different special meaning to all of the pageantry of Tennessee football. But this Saturday will be a lot of fun just to get it going.
Well, that is a cool story right there. And, I've got a lot of Tennessee friends. A lot of them are watching right now. And the thing they say, Brown, when you get Vince Ferrara on there with Dudley, there's great chemistry. These guys are ballers. They know the game. So we're going to start playing a little tennis here right now. Mama Ferrara is open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., the best Italian food in the world. Vince, give us your thoughts on Tennessee right now. Make a case for them to make the 12-team college football playoff because there's a lot of – I've got my top 4. I didn't put Tennessee in it, but that doesn't mean squat because you start winning and Nico Iamaleava, pretty smart noodle there. I said it. Make a case.
Well, I think if you're going to have the pieces to be a college football playoff team or contend even beyond that, you need several things. You need the line of scrimmage, and Tennessee has one of the best defensive lines in the SEC. Top 5 in the country, I think they're that good. They'll play about 13 different guys, and there's a whole lot of people that won't play half of that. in their defensive line rotation. So they're outstanding there. They may have the best defensive player, or even in some preseason ranking, best overall player in James Pierce Jr. So that's one. Another thing you want to have is quarterback play. And I think they're going to be upgraded at quarterback with Nico Iamaleava. He is tall at 6'6". He can elude the rush. He's terrific throwing on the run. He's a willing runner. They'll do some designed RPO, little run just for a threat, not all the time. And then he's accurate down the field. And those, I think, will be enhancements to what they were able to do last year when they took a step back from that record-setting 2022 team. So defensive line, quarterback. And then the other thing is coaching. And I think this is an outstanding coaching staff. They've developed players. Players always get better when they're here. The coaching of Rodney Garner and the wide receivers have gotten better. A number of really good positions have you've seen them improve. So it's a really good coaching staff. You got quarterback and line of scrimmage on the defensive line. I think they've settled on their first five, which is a strong group. They're not very deep, so health is always going to be a concern. And then the other thing I would throw in to make a case for Tennessee is I don't think the schedule is overwhelming. It doesn't have a gauntlet. Yeah. I think it's manageable. It's top heavy with Alabama and Georgia. Oklahoma is in the upper level, but they have a lot of teams that don't have big preseason expectations. Just like with Missouri last year, you never know on who's better. But the schedule, to me, is not a deterrent for them having a success this year. They're good at quarterback, and they're a little bit better on the back end with all those transfers. Then I think this will be a playoff caliber team.
You know, Dudley, one thing Tennessee's got, they got a chancellor, Dondi Plowman. I'm not going to be surprised to see Dondi Plowman and her committee that she's formed and some of the Haslams running through the tee at the Alabama game this year. I mean, she loves football. Cousin Mark Ham is on a committee with her, Audrey's cousin. They meet every month and just said, oh, my God, this woman, let's just say she exudes confidence. And I think the Haslam family and Pilot, what they've done, Dudley, it's pretty cool to preserve that General Neyland's name stays on that stadium is powerful stuff. And they're using that money as a force of good. Dudley, you know, I agree with
everything. I agree with everything Vince just went through. A great summation there. Another thing that I would say is that Tennessee, as football team, has a belief in itself. Tennessee sports program has a belief in itself, and there's a certain swagger or whatever you get from that you're going to go out, play as hard as you can each game. And even if Tennessee, I'm sure Tennessee's not going to go undefeated, but if they do lose, they're going to lose to very good teams that are probably going to be in the playoff. So I think they're going to be one of those teams that we go down the line there that are going to be pushing to get in there at the very end. I thought Game Day and those folks did a great job last week in showing us the bracket and how it's not necessarily the 12 best teams all lined up 1 through 12. You know, you got the conference champ, they keep putting Liberty and all that things up. So I think they've got a great chance to get in there, and I believe that swagger, that belief that in themselves plays a part in this as well. In addition to all the other things you just mentioned. Now I know James Pierce Jr. is going to be a great football player. Probably the biggest thing is going to be he's going to get tons of attention. Are the other guys going to be able to move to a level that they need to?
Yeah, I had the dogs come running through and were shaking the table. Holy, like a Roman chariot race. Ben-Hur Part 2. I'll say this. What you all just said about the playoff, Boise, Liberty, Memphis, I see that for what Jackie Sherrill said on this show a few months ago. You're going to have the super conferences, the top 65 or whatever, and then you'll have a case made for those other teams to have their own playoff if they don't make it. I made my bold statement the other day on Friday's show. I think Memphis makes the playoff this year as the representative of the group of 5. I think they're good enough to go 11-1, 12-0. I mean, they've got the most experienced quarterback when you compare Seth Hennigan versus DJ DJU.
DJU.
DJU. Yeah. That'll be a fun one to watch. But you know what, Vince? It's the interest right now in college football. I met Dan Williams, a former player for Tennessee, played for Kiffin in his first year there, and then he played 7 years in the NFL. Met him at the Touchdown Club. He's a new member in Memphis Monday night. Just big guy. And you know what? You're proud of him. He's a Tennessee grad, and he's getting his MBA at the University of Memphis, wants to get into finance and banking and all like that. That's what student athletes are supposed to do. And people forget about these guys after their career. What is he? He's a young guy. I'll just say that. He got out of the NFL probably in 16 or 17. So I'm guessing he's 36 maybe. So got his whole life ahead of him. Vince, tell us what we don't know that we need to know about Tennessee. Game 1 is against UT Chattanooga. What are you going to be looking for? And then I'm going to do the same thing with Dudley, and we'll wrap it up. What are you going to be looking for from Tennessee in the first game? And if I'm Tennessee, I have Cheez-Its everywhere around Nico Iamaleava because he had a great game at the Cheez-It Bowl, and I think it'll put confidence in his head. Cheez-Its on the sidelines, dropped from above, everywhere.
Yeah, as long as they bring some up to the press box up in the clouds in the Oakland Stadium.
I love those games.
I should bring one in. They gave the media complimentary Cheez-Its boxes with the logos of Tennessee and Iowa last year. So I haven't touched it. It's unopened, so I should bring that
Collector's
in.
item. Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. I haven't messed with it. But to answer your question, I think it's who they play. That's the most meaningful thing in this game, because at times there were different guys either being held out or banged up in practice. Now, good development was their offensive line got healthy. They were able to get some work for their first five and get that chemistry. So who's playing and who doesn't, who's still held out and who's not. But it seems like they're in a good spot. But here's the thing with Josh Heupel. There's not many things you can nitpick him for. But one of the things that I would like to see him do and his staff do more is in mismatch games, in blowout games, to play his reserves earlier. And at times they've done it under Heupel where they're blowing teams out by 5 touchdowns, yet they're coming back out for the third quarter. I don't get that with football coaches. I understand the reasoning for it. I just think it's way overrated. Get them out of harm's way. Get your backups some work. You say you have you have the most depth on the roster since you've been here. Play those guys. And here's what's happened in the past is you start accumulating, if you wait too long, you start accumulating too many snaps in game for your starters. And then it takes a toll on you later in the year. Joey Halsley, interestingly, in camp, every time we've talked to him, offensive coordinator, he's mentioned how with 17 games this year that they're going to have to be more mindful about playing more receivers and playing more players. Well, 17 games, that means you're playing for a national championship or winning one. They're counting those games. Yes. If you're going to have that mindset, you need to follow through on that and get your starters out earlier in blowout games, or sprinkle your backups in before it's out of hand. And that way you get them the key work. And then when you have injuries later in the year, then they're ready to go.
Dudley, you always make a great point about, and I love what Vince just said, and I agree with him. Play them early. 1 through 44, Arkansas solid. It's 45 to 66 and 67 to 85. What are you looking for? I don't care who you're playing. It's ultimately about Arkansas getting better. Give me 3 things you want to see happen, good things, Thursday night in the capital city, which is I love Little Rock. That is a beautiful city. And, the Stevens Tower stands tall right there on the Arkansas River, but that's a cool place to play a football game because you got the zoo and a bunch of stuff there. And it's also sentimental for a lot of my Hog friends because they say I don't have to drive as far, but still can't beat Fayetteville either.
Yeah, linebackers. 5 went out the door, 5 came in the door. They feel better at that position, but I'm anxious to see, how they're going to play, what that's going to look like as a unit. I can see them in practice, but until they're out in the flats, I'm anxious to see real football tackling. Thudding is cool and all that, but that thudding's for a dance floor. Tackling's for football field. So I'm anxious to see that. Offensive line, was not very good last year. Really went and replenished that. I'm anxious to see, can they run the ball? on 3rd and 3, which they couldn't last year, or for that matter, run it on 1st and 10, and they should have been able to. Got a lot of great backs there. And the third thing really is, I'll just toss it out there. Earlier this week, 10,000 tickets were still left for this game. You got Arkansas State. They're playing Arkansas State the second game of the year next year. And somebody who grew up in the northeast part of the state who really enjoyed going to Little Rock. I'm kind of sad that it's getting to this point that either you're going to have to fill that place up or they're all going to be up here. And again, we talk about businesses. These are businesses. So how many people are going to show up? And if you don't show up, don't be griping.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And that's what some of the Razorback fans were saying. I know several that are going to Little Rock, and they love it. Now, the younger ones, I don't know, but
you got to come in off the golf course. You got to come in off the. I don't even know if the golf course is still there now. You got to come in off that golf course and go inside the game. Or it's not going to make a difference.
Well, another thing too is it's Labor Day weekend. A lot of people are going to be off Friday, or they may be at work. In present, but not really into it. So might as well take off. I love it, Vince. This college football season, there's so many different narratives in there. What do you want to see happen in the SEC this year? Do you want to see, we've got that tiebreaker formula? Do you understand? There's so many possibilities. We could have an 11-1 team and 4 or 5 10-2 teams. Is that good or bad for the league? Is that parity or is that just cannibalization?
I think if you have that kind of strength at the top, yes, that means you're going to have a bunch of really bad teams. But I still think that's how you're going to be judged because of the scoreboard. And if you're that deep in playoff teams that you get in and contenders for it, even though you have to give some of those losses up on the bottom end, I still think they will be lauded as the best conference. And it's basically a competition with the Big Ten. What I don't want, because I'd like to see the SEC eventually go to 9 games.
Yes,
I don't want the SEC to be rewarded is maybe not the right way to put it, but if the SEC makes out like a bandit with 8-game schedules and they get a bunch of teams in, that'll be the data point that everyone needs to say, see, we need to stay with 8 games. Why do we need to change? This is working for us. It probably will work for them because their 8 games is still going to be strong. I mean, look at the ranked. There's 3 games involving 2 ranked teams this weekend. They're all involving SEC teams. Yeah. So as much as the SEC gets criticized for its non-conference scheduling, nobody has more ranked team games than the SEC this weekend. So that I don't want the SEC to have too many teams in that playoff because then the schedule is not going to change moving forward.
One other thing, I think maybe the most important thing in college football this season is not going to happen on the field. It's going to happen off the field. They need to pass the limiting the transfer portal bill to just in December and the first few days of January, because it's become a plethora and a cluster of all this stuff in the spring. People going through spring practice and all that. They need to put it in one timely manner. I'm all for that. I think that needs to happen, and I think it will help coaches and help football programs. When you're curbing free agency a little bit now that we have it in college football.
Dudley, I absolutely agree with that. You've got to have structure. And I'm going to put you in charge of our team. I don't like the word committee. It sounds too political. Our team, and we're going to have a round table with no chairs. We'll stand, so the meetings will be 10 minutes or less. But that's the kind of stuff we need to do. I really believe that the free market is already fixing this stuff. Jordan Hill covers Georgia for 24/7 Sports, one of the best out there. He said one thing Kirby and Dan Schumann and Will Muschamp and Mike Bobo and the Georgia staff do is they talk to the kids that might be a number 2 or a number 3 and say, man, look, it's a free country, dude. You can transfer, hit that button. Go ahead, hit it. Ring that bell 3 times. That's all it takes. All right? But you stay here, you're more likely to get developed. You may not be drafted, but you might go as a free agent, okay? But you stay here, we're going to develop you. So the guy I know, several people that are working in collectives that run them, they said, in the past, it was the 3 C's when it came to recruiting: clothes, cash, and cars. Now it's the 3 C's: campus, culture, coaching. Dudley nailed it. Right?
Chicks have got to be in there too.
Oh, absolutely, babe. Absolutely. I got to have women. I mean, a good-looking women on the, the recruiting hostess and stuff, and getting them in there and seeing that culture. Vince, what else besides what Dudley said can we do? And also the December signing period, with the portal being open, and then you having to retain and recruit your current players. That's why some of these bowl games, the coaches, you look at them, you're like, that team didn't look like they were prepared, because the coaching staff doesn't have time.
Yeah, everything's going on now with the playoffs. You have to recruit. You have to recruit your own players. You have to prepare for more games, including playoffs, potentially multiple weeks. Josh Heupel was asked about that scenario last year. It's only going to get worse. And if that's the only time that there's a window for the transfer portal, guess what? There's going to be even more players that are going to go through. It's just going to shift when they go. I don't think it's going to limit the number of players that go. And there was like 2,700, a record last year. So I think it's going to be a mess for them during that December period. I just don't envy them at all anytime, much less during that period. I'm sorry, guys. I gotta. We gotta get coming in here, so they're gonna kick me out.
No, Vince, look, catch him on the Sports Animal in Knoxville. Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net. Both of y'all, great show. Got everything worked out, but that's what we'll talk about next week. Is just limiting on that portal, man. Look, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. God bless America. Whatever this bump music is, it's awesome. We're looking to bring Chuck Level on, who is a keyboardist with the Allman Brothers, the Rolling Stones, and Pink Floyd. Late September, says he wants to come on our show. He's a huge football fan. So, man, I don't know what this music is, but crank it up, man. We'll see y'all tomorrow. It's bump music in the podcast world. Thank you.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal, and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.